Viewer discretion is advised.
Dr. Ritter waited patiently in quiet disgust as His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Maximilian the Great, greedily shoveled his meal down his cavernous gullet. The staff had taken to calling him King Max. Dr. Ritter secretly hoped that the reckless speed at which Max ate, coupled with the fact that he never bothered to chew his food, would eventually result in him choking to death. But so far, there had been no such luck. He supposed that if the creature's horrid table manners hadn't gotten him killed yet, then his anatomy was probably sufficiently non-human to render choking a moot concern. You done? Patience, dear boy. Patience. What's the rush? One should take their time to enjoy a feast. Chew slowly and thoroughly. Savor every bit of flavor it can offer. A life was slaughtered for this, you know. It'd be blasphemous to consume it without giving the proper respect it deserves. Dr. Ritter groaned as King Max took another bite off the meat, delicately this time. Say, it wouldn't be much of a feast if I'm the only one eating, would it? Care to join me, Dr. Ritter? Dr. Ritter shuddered as he looked at the mountain of hideously prepped food in front of King Max. But if it meant getting this over with, then no thank you. Come on now, it's a feast. You're making me look really bad here, all you lot, like a king who doesn't look out for his people, leaving them to starve. I am not like that. Surely you know that. King Max stood up and waved his food around with a grimace on his face. Juices and bits and pieces of meat splattered across the floor and table. Messily half-chewed bits of food fell out of his mouth as well. It irked Dr. Ritter greatly. He then sat back down and tossed the half-eaten food carelessly onto the table. You're honestly ruining my mood here, Doctor. I think I shall retire to my chamber now. But you agreed to— I am enervated, Doctor. Fine, my apologies. Please let me join in the feast. Very well. King Max paused and looked straight into Dr. Ritter's eyes. Then, with a wry smile, it said, Get on your knees and beg for it like a peasant. Dr. Ritter could barely manage to stop himself from cursing out loud and jeopardizing the interrogation. King Max looked him dead in the eyes for a moment. He let out a guffaw, extremely pleased at the sight of an insulted Dr. Ritter. Dr. Ritter could only remain seated across the table, grappling with his seething rage within as he watched the foul creature swallow another piece of meat. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you a tale from the SCP Foundation. Despite his scientific training and years of experience with the Foundation, Dr. Ritter couldn't bring himself to view his assigned subject objectively. When he sat across from the awfully bloated King Max, he saw only a monster from a fairy tale. Not a modern, Disneyfied fairy tale either, but an old European folktale where children were eaten alive, and not all villains got what they deserved. At roughly 3,600 pounds, Max was over 2.5 times the weight of the heaviest human on record. He was basically the size of an adult male hippopotamus. His diet required 54,000 calories per day to maintain, and the Foundation was more than willing to oblige. Max likely knew the locations of other SCP-3288 hives, which the Foundation desperately needed to prevent his kin from eventually overrunning the planet. Torture had proven ineffective, so they decided it would be best to try a more hospitable approach by providing their royal guests with any and all reasonable requests. They had dressed him in a modified caparison originally meant for a horse. It was not for His Imperial Majesty's dignity, but more for the comfort of the staff. They let him keep his crown since they couldn't safely remove it from the carbuncular outgrowths holding it in place without surgery. They even gave him a throne by putting his immobile body over a hole in the floor connected to his personal septic tank. This too was more out of necessity than courtesy, as both the volume and intensity of the king's imperial stool was beyond any ordinary plumbing. Food, however, was always King Max's most pertinent demand. Despite his pretensions of nobility, he was not a very picky eater. The bulk of his diet consists of rice, oats, and pasta, supplemented by stale cafeteria leftovers. With a robust immune system and stomach acid as strong as a crocodile's, there was very little the corpulent king could not stomach. And stomach he did. 70 pounds of it a day, enough to feed some people for a month. Though most of his fare was either cheap or rotten, His Majesty did have one particular addiction: no exceptions. The Foundation was forced to oblige if they wanted his cooperation. Just for this interview, a literal pound of flesh, retrieved from some D-class killed in action, and unused corpses the Foundation had lying around, was presented to the king as his reward for good behavior. It sickened Dr. Ritter, all of it. He tried to suppress these thoughts. He told himself to think of all the lives they could save if they could just get this fiend to disclose the location of the other hives. But it didn't work. This abomination had been gorging itself to superhuman obesity on innocent humans for over half a century before the Foundation found it. Now that it's in containment, they're still giving it human flesh? Weren't those D-class more human than whatever this thing was? Didn't they deserve better? Doesn't this bastard deserve worse? Dr. Ritter showed little sign of his inner turmoil, merely pushing up his glasses and clearing his throat before starting the interrogation. Does His Imperial Majesty find himself in the mood for some after-dinner conversation? I'd very much like to hear more about the Empress of the Black Forest. Ah, the Empress. Magnificent creature, most noble of all of us. I had the privilege of seeing her before I swallowed my eyes, you know. More than 10 feet tall she was, yet slender as a sapling. One eye pale blue, the other moonlit silver. Vanity's her greatest vice. Has a vast collection of wigs made from the scalps of her prey. Not that she's ever let her femininity keep her from carnality. She delights in the harming of others. Men, women, nobles, peasants. It's all the same to her. I made the mistake of scoffing when she said she could mutilate a man, and my poor belly hasn't been the same since. Max mused as he wiped his face with his now filthy caparison, then tossed his head back in rancorous laughter. If I hadn't been both impeded and impotent from my size, I would have paid her back in kind, rest assured. That's most fascinating, Your Majesty. I'd very much like to meet her for myself someday. I assume her manor is in the Black Forest Mountains? Do you happen to know where exactly? Max chuckled deeply at the question. The ruling class does need to keep in touch with one another, of course, but I'm afraid my living arrangements, though decent enough they are not yet quite decadent enough for me to betray my fellow royals. Dr. Ritter sighed, a feeling of dread welling up inside him. What more do you want? Live meat, for starters. Right now, I'm lucky if it's even fresh. I want something to play with, something that puts up a bit more of a fight. A healthy man once a fortnight. That won't empty your society, surely. I'll even settle for cripples. Practically doing you a favor here. I'll see what I can do. That's what he was supposed to say to the king's demands, no matter how obscene. Dr. Ritter was to report the brute's every request to his superiors, and they would decide with their coldly utilitarian rationality whether or not feeding this swine live children would be worth it. And what if they said yes? I'll see you in the ground before I feed you live humans, you monster! Dr. Ritter shouted and slammed his fist on the button that activated the UV flood lamps that had been placed to subdue the king, should he ever become hostile. Max howled in agony and terror as the light instantly burned his unpigmented skin. Dr. Ritter grabbed the caparison and yanked it off, maximizing the king's exposure to the aberrant light. You tell me where the other hives are now, or I will burn you to a cinder, you fat bastard. As with all previous attempts at torture, the king just screamed and pleaded for mercy. Dr. Ritter, you are not authorized to use enhanced interrogation on the subject. Desist immediately, or you will be removed by force and subjected to disciplinary measures. Dr. Ritter jammed the door shut with his chair to buy himself more time. All these years, I've had enough of your ugly mug, your disgusting ways, and now I'm finally gonna see you choke. He picked up the sheet the creature had been wearing and tied it into a crude noose. Then he placed it around King Max's neck and pulled. Bracing his feet against the nearest fixture for leverage, he strangled the monster with all his might. Max gargled as he suffocated. He clawed at the noose with his stubby fingers, but couldn't get a grip. When the door slammed open, the guards tackled and subdued Dr. Ritter. He knew it hadn't been long enough for Max to suffocate. He despaired for a moment, fearing he had thrown his career away for nothing, until he heard the guard inspecting Max curse in frustration. Damn it, it's dead. A wave of relief washed over Dr. Ritter. Even as he was dragged from the cell in handcuffs, a victorious grin spread across his face. Dr. Ritter, you have been brought before this disciplinary committee for the unauthorized termination of SCP-3288-Alpha. Due to SCP-3288-Alpha's authority and status among SCP-3288, it's likely your actions have cost the Foundation a rare and possibly unique source of strategic intelligence regarding a potential SK-level threat to human society. Do you understand these charges? I know exactly what I've done. Dr. Ritter stood proud and tall, without a hint of remorse in his voice as he spoke. Whatever their practical reasons for indulging that beast had been, no more innocent lives would be sacrificed to it any longer. Max, the evil fairy tale villain, was no more, and that made him the hero. I've slayed the Goblin King.